The baby was already alive the night I let my family destroy her. I didn't find the ultrasound photo until 3 days after Claire disappeared. It was hidden beneath a stack of winter sweaters in the back of her dresser drawer, folded inside a white envelope with my last name written across the front in her handwriting. Morty. My chest tightened the second I saw it because Claire never called herself Claire Morty unless she was trying to remind herself she still belonged to me. The penthouse felt too quiet that morning. No soft music drifting from the kitchen. No vanilla coffee candle burning beside the windows. No Claire curled beneath the gray blanket on the couch pretending to read while secretly waiting for me to stop working and sit beside her. Just silence. Cold, heavy silence pressing against the walls like a storm waiting to break the glass. Rain slid down the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, blurring the skyline into silver streaks. 29 floors above the city, surrounded by more money than most people would ever touch in their lives, I had never felt poorer. I sat on the edge of our bed staring at the photo in my hands while my pulse hammered so hard I could hear it in my ears. 12 weeks. That's what the doctor had written near the corner beside the grainy black and white image. 12 weeks. My wife had been carrying our child while standing alone at that dinner table 3 nights earlier while my mother humiliated her in front of 20 people, and I did absolutely nothing to stop it. I closed my eyes and the memory slammed into me instantly. Crystal chandeliers. Expensive wine. My mother's diamond bracelet tapping against her champagne glass while she smiled that cold smile perfected by rich women who destroyed people politely. "She's lovely, Damien." She'd said softly enough for everyone to hear, but are we seriously pretending she belongs in this family? Claire had frozen beside me. I remember that part clearly now. The way her fingers tightened around the stem of her water glass, the tiny tremble in her shoulders, the hurt she tried to hide behind that calm expression she always wore whenever someone richer than her tried to make her feel small. She looked at me then. God, that was the part destroying me now. She looked at me waiting for me to say something, anything. Tell them to stop. Defend her. Choose her. But I stayed silent because silence had always worked in my world. Silence kept peace. Silence maintained control. Silence made people fear me. Except that night my silence told my wife she was standing alone. I opened my eyes slowly and looked back down at the ultrasound photo. My hands were shaking now, actually shaking. I couldn't remember the last time that it happened to me, probably never. Men like me weren't supposed to shake. We weren't supposed to panic. We especially weren't supposed to feel helpless over a single piece of paper hidden in a drawer. But all I could see was Claire standing in our bedroom hours before that dinner holding this exact envelope against her chest while smiling to herself. She had known already. She had planned to tell me. My stomach twisted violently. On the night I should have become the happiest man alive, I became the reason she walked away instead. I stood abruptly and crossed the room toward her dresser again. The drawer was still open. Inside, beneath the sweaters, I noticed something else folded carefully near the back corner, a handwritten note. My breathing stopped before I even picked it up. The paper was soft from being folded too many times. Claire always folded things when she was nervous. I unfolded it slowly. One sentence. That was all she wrote. You were supposed to hear the heartbeat first. The world tilted beneath me. I sat back down hard on the edge of the bed as Manhattan blurred outside the windows. Somewhere below, the city continued moving. Horns, traffic, sirens, millions of people living their lives. But inside that room, time stopped. Because for the first time in my entire life, Damien Morty was terrified. Not of enemies, not of betrayal, not of losing power. I was terrified because the woman I loved had vanished carrying my child. And I finally understood that this time, money, fear, and power might not be enough to bring her back. I did not sleep that night, or the next one. By the 4th morning, the city outside my penthouse windows looked washed out and unreal. Like Manhattan itself was fading from exhaustion alongside me. Empty espresso cups covered the kitchen island. My dress shirt from yesterday still hung open at the collar. Wrinkled now, sleeves rolled unevenly to my elbows. Claire would have hated that. She used to fix my cuffs every morning before I left. Small hands, smoothing expensive fabric, while she smiled up at me like I was something worth loving instead of something dangerous. I stared at the security footage playing across the monitors in my office for the 100th time. Grainy black and white recordings from the underground garage, elevator cameras, lobby entrances, every second of the night she left. At 11:42 p.m., Claire stepped out of the elevator wearing a cream-colored sweater and carrying one suitcase. One suitcase. That was all she took after 2 years of marriage. No jewelry except her wedding band. No designer bags. No dramatic scene. She moved slowly across the marble lobby with her head lowered like she was trying not to cry in public. The doorman offered to call her a car. She smiled politely and said she would walk. Walk, in freezing November rain. My chest tightened watching her disappear through the revolving doors again. I paused the footage there every single time. right before she vanished into the storm, right before I lost her. Boss, Mateo's voice broke through the A behind me. I did not turn around. Tell me you found something. My oldest friend hesitated, which already told me the answer. Nothing solid yet. We tracked her phone for about 20 minutes after she left the building, then it went dark near Midtown. I shut my eyes briefly. Claire always charged her phone. Always. Bank activity, none after Thursday night. Credit cards, no movement. My jaw tightened harder with every answer. Claire Bennett had disappeared from New York like smoke slipping through open fingers. No money, no calls, no digital trail. Just gone. Mateo stepped further into the office carefully, like even he was unsure who I had become over the past 72 hours. Damien, he said quietly, you need to eat. Something. I almost laughed at that. Eat? I could barely breathe. The ultrasound photo still sat on my desk beside Claire's handwritten note. I had read the sentence so many times the paper had started creasing along the edges. You were supposed to hear the heartbeat first. Every word cut deeper than the last. Did she say anything to the staff before she left? I asked. Mateo shook his head. Housekeeping said she looked calm. One of the drivers saw her crying in the lobby bathroom for a few minutes before she walked out. My stomach twisted violently. Claire hated crying in front of people. She used to hide in bathrooms during emotional movies because she thought crying made her look weak. God, she had stood there alone carrying my baby while I sat at a polished dining table letting my family humiliate her like she was temporary. A memory hit me suddenly, sharp enough to steal the air from my lungs. Thursday morning. Claire standing barefoot in the kitchen wearing my gray sweatshirt. Sunlight across her hair. She had looked nervous, happy nervous. Are you free tonight? She asked softly while pouring orange juice into a glass. I barely looked up from my phone. Depends. I made reservations somewhere after dinner with your family. I remembered frowning slightly. Why? Her smile had been small then, almost shy. I just wanted tonight to be special. I pressed the heels of my palms into my eyes hard enough to see white flashes behind them. She had been trying to tell me. The realization tore through me all over again. She planned an entire night around telling me I was going to become a father. Instead, I let her leave believing she was alone. My office suddenly felt too small, too expensive, too empty. I stood abruptly and grabbed my coat from the chair. Mateo straightened immediately. Where are you going? Out. Damien, it is almost 3 o'clock in the morning, and she is out there somewhere alone. Rain hammered against the windows as I headed for the elevator. Mateo followed close behind. You cannot search the entire city yourself. I pressed the lobby button harder than necessary. Watch me. Because somewhere in New York, Claire was carrying my child while thinking I did not want them. And for the first time in my life, power meant absolutely nothing. By sunrise, I had driven through half the city myself. Brooklyn Heights, Upper West Side, Midtown clinics. 3 different hotels where wealthy wives usually disappeared after ugly fights with powerful husbands. Every place smelled like coffee, wet pavement, and exhaustion. None of them smelled like Claire. Rainwater streaked across the windshield of my black Mercedes while traffic crawled through Manhattan beneath pale gray skies. The city was waking up around me. Delivery trucks blocking intersections, steam rising from subway grates, women in long coats hurrying toward office buildings with paper coffee cups in their hands. Normal life. I used to love mornings like this because New York looked honest before the rich people fully woke up. Claire loved them because she said the city looked softer in the rain. God, I missed hearing her voice. My phone buzzed against the console again. Mateo, tell me something useful. I answered immediately. We found a possible lead. Every muscle in my body tightened. Where? A pharmacy in Queens. One of the employees recognized Claire from a picture. Said she came in 2 days ago asking for prenatal vitamins. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles whitened instantly. Prenatal vitamins. The words hit me harder than they should have. Real. The baby suddenly felt real in the ultrasound photo had not fully prepared me for. Claire standing alone beneath fluorescent pharmacy lights reading labels while carrying our child inside her body. Claire doing everything herself because I failed her. Address, I said sharply. Mateo gave it to me while I cut across 2 lanes without thinking. Horns blared behind me. I barely heard them. 40 minutes later, I stepped into the small pharmacy tucked between a laundromat and a corner deli in Queens. Warm air smelled faintly like dust and medicine. A bell chimed softly over the entrance door. The woman behind the register looked up nervously when she recognized me. People usually reacted that way around me. Fear first, questions later, but I was too tired to care anymore. You spoke to my associate earlier, I said carefully, about my wife. Her expression softened slightly at the word wife. The blonde woman? My chest tightened immediately. Blonde woman, Claire. Yes, she came in Wednesday evening. Wednesday, 1 day after leaving me. The woman glanced toward the shelves as if replaying the memory. She looked exhausted. Sweet though, very polite. I swallowed hard. That sounded exactly like Claire, falling apart quietly while apologizing for taking up space. Did she say where she was staying? The cashier hesitated. No, but she asked where the nearest urgent care clinic was. My pulse stumbled unevenly. Why? She almost fainted near the register. The floor beneath me felt unstable for one horrible second. What? She said it was just stress. The woman's voice gentled, but she was shaking pretty badly. I gave her water before she left. I stared at the counter silently while guilt spread through my chest like slow poison. Claire hated hospitals, hated doctors. She once cried for an hour after getting blood drawn because she was terrified something would be wrong with me when I had routine surgery last year. If she went to urgent care alone, she must have been truly scared. Do you remember which clinic? I asked quietly. She wrote an address onto a receipt paper and handed it over. I hope you find her. I nodded once and turned toward the door, but her next words stopped me cold. She kept touching her wedding ring the whole time. I looked back slowly. What? The cashier smiled sadly, like she missed you. The drive to the clinic took 12 minutes. 12 miserable minutes where every memory of Claire replayed endlessly inside my head. Her laughing barefoot in our kitchen at midnight. Her falling asleep against my shoulder during movies she pretended she was not emotional enough to cry over. The way she whispered my name softly when she thought I was asleep beside her. I parked illegally outside the urgent care center and walked in immediately. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead while daytime television played quietly in the waiting room. A nurse behind the front desk looked startled when I approached. I am looking for my wife, I said, already pulling Claire's photo from my wallet. Please. My voice cracked slightly on the last word. The nurse studied the picture carefully, then recognition crossed her face. My heart stopped instantly. She was here, the nurse said softly. Yesterday morning. Yesterday I was 1 day behind her. 1 day too late again. Is she okay? The nurse hesitated. That hesitation nearly destroyed me. Sir, she said gently, your wife has been under a lot of stress. I closed my eyes briefly because deep down I already knew that. I was the stress. The nurse looked like she regretted speaking the second she saw my expression change. Her fingers tightened around the clipboard against her chest while fluorescent lights hummed softly above us. What kind of stress? I asked carefully, too carefully. The kind of careful that usually meant I was 1 second away from losing control completely. Sir, I really cannot discuss patient details. I slid my wedding ring across the counter toward her beside Claire's photograph. Please. My voice sounded rough now, exhausted, human. I'm not here to cause problems. I just need to know if my wife and my baby are safe. The nurse's eyes dropped to the ring first, then softened slightly at the word baby. Everyone softened at the word baby except me apparently. I had managed to turn the happiest moment of our lives into something Claire ran away from. She was dehydrated, the nurse admitted quietly. Low blood pressure, stress-related dizziness. My chest tightened painfully. Claire barely remembered to eat when she was upset. I knew that. God, I knew that. She once survived an entire work day on crackers and coffee after we argued over something stupid during our first year together. I used to tease her about it afterward while making her pancakes at midnight. The memory nearly broke me in half standing there under those ugly hospital lights. Did she leave alone? I asked. Yes. The nurse hesitated again, but she cried when she heard the heartbeat. I stopped breathing entirely. The heartbeat. My hand flattened against the counter to steady myself. Somewhere inside that clinic, yesterday morning, my child's heartbeat filled a room while Claire sat there alone wishing I was beside her. The realization hollowed something inside me instantly. Did she say where she was going next? The nurse shook her head softly. No, but she kept asking if stress could hurt the baby. Baby, not pregnancy, not fetus. Baby. Claire already loved our child enough to be terrified of failing them. I swallowed hard enough to hurt. Thank you, I managed quietly. She nodded sympathetically. I hope you find her. So did I, because every hour that passed without Claire felt wrong now. Like the world itself had tilted slightly off balance. Outside, cold wind whipped through Queens while rainwater pooled near the sidewalks. I sat behind the wheel of my car for almost 10 full minutes without turning the engine on, just staring through the windshield while the nurse's words repeated inside my skull. She cried when she heard the heartbeat. I imagined it too clearly. Claire lying on an exam table in an oversized sweater with tears sliding silently down her cheeks while a tiny heartbeat echoed through a dark room. She should have been squeezing my hand. She should have laughed nervously afterward while asking me if the baby already had my stubborn personality. Instead, she sat there alone because I let her believe she was unwanted. My phone buzzed against the dashboard. Mateo again. Talk to me, he answered immediately. We found another lead. My grip tightened around the phone. Where? A cab driver. Hope hit so hard it almost hurt physically. He picked Claire up outside the clinic yesterday morning. Where did he take her? Silence. Then Mateo exhaled slowly. Upstate. My pulse stumbled unevenly. How far upstate? About 2 hours north of the city. Small town called Haven Lake. I leaned back against the seat and shut my eyes briefly. Claire loved quiet places, lakes, trees, snow-covered towns that looked untouched by the noise of Manhattan. Whenever my world became too dark, she used to show me photos of little towns like that on her phone and whisper, "One day we should disappear somewhere peaceful." I never realized she would disappear there without me. "I am heading there now," I said instantly. "Damien," Mateo's voice lowered carefully. "You have not slept in days, neither has she." Rain tapped softly against the windshield while traffic moved around me in blurred gray streaks. Then another memory surfaced suddenly. Claire curled against me 3 months earlier while snow fell outside our penthouse windows, her head resting over my heartbeat. "Do you ever think about having kids?" she asked quietly. I remembered smiling faintly against her hair. "You want little monsters running around my house." "Maybe one little monster." Her voice had sounded shy, hopeful. God, she had probably already known that. The pain in my chest sharpened so violently, I actually pressed a fist against my ribs. I had spent years building an empire where people feared disappointing me. Yet somehow the only person whose disappointment truly mattered was the woman now running from me carrying my child. I started the engine hard enough for the car to vibrate beneath me. Manhattan waited behind me, wrapped in rain and steel and memories I suddenly hated. Somewhere 2 hours north, Claire was alone, believing I would never come for her. She was wrong, because I would search every road, every town, every freezing corner of this country if I had to. Not because she belonged to me, but because I finally understood something too late. My life stopped feeling like home the second she walked out of it. The farther I drove from Manhattan, the quieter the world became. Steel skyscrapers faded behind me until the roads narrowed into winding highways lined with bare November trees and small gas stations glowing beneath pale morning light. Haven Lake appeared just after noon beneath low gray clouds and drifting fog. It looked exactly like the kind of place Claire used to show me on her phone late at night. Small bookstores, family diners, snow beginning to gather alongside walks. The kind of town where nobody cared about power or money because everyone already knew each other's names. I parked across from the lake itself and stepped out into freezing wind. The air smelled like pine trees and wood smoke instead of rain and exhaust. Claire would love this place. That thought hurt more than it should have, because I suddenly understood she had not just run from me. She had run toward peace. My phone buzzed again in my coat pocket. "Mateo, any updates?" I asked immediately while scanning the quiet streets. The cab driver dropped her near a bed and breakfast on Maple Street. My heartbeat picked up instantly. "Did he see her go inside?" "Yes." I was already moving before the call ended. Maple Street sat near the edge of town beside a bakery with fogged windows and Christmas lights hanging too early across the storefront. The bed and breakfast looked old but warm, with white shutters and flower boxes beneath the windows despite the cold. A small wooden sign near the porch read Willow House. I climbed the front steps 2 at a time. Bells chimed softly overhead when I opened the door. Warm air wrapped around me, instantly carrying the smell of cinnamon and coffee. The woman behind the front desk looked up from a crossword puzzle. Her expression shifted immediately when she saw me. Most people reacted that way around me eventually. Expensive coat, cold eyes, a man who looked like he belonged in trouble rather than small towns. "Can I help you?" she asked cautiously. I pulled Claire's photograph from my wallet again. The edges were starting to bend from how often I had handled it. "I am looking for my wife." The woman studied the picture carefully. Recognition flickered across her face so quickly my chest tightened painfully. "She stayed here," the woman admitted slowly. Relief hit me so hard my knees nearly weakened. Claire had been here, breathing the same warm air, sleeping somewhere under this roof while I tore Manhattan apart looking for her. "Which room?" I asked immediately. The woman frowned. "Sir, she checked out this morning." The words landed like a punch directly to my ribs. "What?" "Around 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock. I had missed her by hours. Again my hand pressed against the front desk hard enough for the wood to creak softly beneath my palm. "Did she say where she was going?" "No." The woman hesitated carefully, but she looked scared. I shut my eyes briefly. Claire always looked scared right before she pretended she was fine. "Was she alone?" "Yes." The woman softened slightly as she looked at me more closely. "Young women do not usually travel alone up here this time of year. Young women carrying babies definitely should not have." Guilt spread through my chest all over again. "Did she leave anything behind?" I asked quietly. The woman blinked once. Actually, hope slammed into me instantly. She disappeared briefly into a back office before returning with a cream-colored knit scarf folded carefully in her hands. Claire's scarf. I recognized it immediately because I bought it for her last Christmas after she spent 20 minutes pretending she was not cold during our walk through Central Park. My throat tightened the second I touched the soft fabric. It still smelled faintly like her perfume, vanilla and jasmine. "Home. She forgot it this morning." The woman explained gently. I figured she might come back for it. I stared down at the scarf silently while memories flooded me one after another. Claire wrapped in this exact scarf, laughing while snow fell into her hair. Claire stealing my coffee because hers was too bitter. Claire curled against me on winter mornings while sleepy sunlight filled our bedroom. God, I missed her so much it physically hurt to breathe sometimes. There is one more thing, the woman said softly. I looked up immediately. She asked me where the nearest church was. Confusion flickered through me. Church? St. Mary's, about 10 minutes from here. The woman hesitated. She seemed upset. Claire was not deeply religious, but she always went to churches when life became too overwhelming. Quiet places made her feel safe. I remembered once finding her alone inside an empty cathedral in Manhattan after a difficult week. She told me silence felt different there, softer somehow. I tightened my grip around the scarf. Thank you. Outside, cold wind cut across the lake while snow began falling lightly through gray skies. Tiny white flakes landed against the dark sleeves of my coat and melted instantly. Somewhere in this quiet little town, Claire was still close enough for me to feel it. Close enough for me to almost reach her. I slid back behind the wheel and stared at the church address written across the back of a receipt. Then I looked down at the scarf in my hands one last time. My wife left Manhattan carrying my child because I failed to protect her heart. But for the first time since she disappeared, I was finally close enough to fix it. St. Mary's sat at the edge of Haven Lake surrounded by snow-covered pine trees and silence so deep it almost felt holy. The church looked small compared to the towering cathedrals back in Manhattan, but something about it immediately reminded me of Claire. Warm light glowed through stained glass windows while snow drifted softly onto the stone steps outside. Peaceful, gentle, the exact opposite of the world I came from. I climbed the stairs slowly with her scarf still wrapped around my hand. My expensive shoes echoed against old stone while cold wind followed behind me. For the first time in years, I felt nervous walking into a building. Not because I feared what waited inside, because I feared what if she was not there. The heavy wooden doors creaked softly as I stepped into church. Warm candlelight flickered across polished pews. The scent of wax and old wood filled the quiet air. Somewhere near the front, faint piano music played through hidden speakers. Soft enough to sound like a memory instead of sound. I stopped moving the second I saw her. Claire sat alone near the last row beside a stained glass window painted in shades of blue and gold. Her cream-colored coat wrapped tightly around her small frame. Blonde hair falling loosely over her shoulders, one hand resting protectively against her stomach while she stared down at the floor quietly. Breathing suddenly became difficult. She looked smaller somehow, fragile in a way I had never noticed before. Or maybe I had noticed and simply convinced myself she would never break because she loved me too much to leave. My chest tightened painfully as I watched her from across the church. She looked exhausted, pale beneath the candlelight. There were dark shadows under her eyes like she had not slept in days either. Guilt hit me so hard I nearly turned around and walked out because what right did I have to stand near her now? But then she lifted her head slightly and our eyes met. Time stopped instantly. Claire froze. Her face lost all color while her fingers tightened against the edge of the pew beside her. For one terrible second neither of us moved. Snow drifted softly outside the stained glass windows while silence stretched painfully between us. Claire, I said quietly. Her eyes filled immediately. God, that destroyed me faster than anything else could have. Claire had always cried softly. Quiet tears. Quiet pain. Even now she was trying not to break apart in front of me. She stood too quickly and swayed slightly before catching herself against the pew. Instinct moved me forward immediately. Careful, I breathed. She stepped backward before I could reach her. That hurt more than I expected. Do not, she whispered shakily. Please. I stopped instantly because for the first time since I met her, Claire looked afraid of me emotionally instead of physically. Like getting close to me again might destroy what little strength she had left. I just needed to see you, I said carefully. How did you find me? Her voice trembled slightly. I held up the scarf still wrapped around my hand. Recognition crossed her face immediately. You left this behind. Claire stared at the scarf for a long moment before lowering her eyes. I did not mean to. Neither did I almost said. I did not mean to lose you. I did not mean to make you feel alone. I did not mean to become the kind of man who let his wife cry in silence carrying his child. But apologies suddenly felt too small for what I had done. You should not have come here, she whispered finally. I know. Then why did you? Because I could not breathe without you. Because Manhattan feels empty now. Because hearing our baby's heartbeat without me nearly killed me. But none of those words came out right away. I just looked at her standing beneath candlelight with tears trembling in her eyes while one protective hand stayed over her stomach. My family's insults echoed loudly inside my skull all over again. She does not belong here. God, they were wrong. Claire belonged everywhere warmth existed. I was the one who never deserved her. I found the ultrasound photo, I admitted quietly. Her face crumpled instantly. She turned away sharply like the words physically hurt her. Claire, please stop saying my name like that. Her voice cracked, like you suddenly care. The pain in those words hollowed my chest instantly. I do care. She laughed softly then, a broken little sound that nearly shattered me completely. You cared so much you let them humiliate me while I sat there carrying your child. Silence swallowed the church again, because she was right. Every terrible word was true. I took one careful step closer. I not know. Claire looked at me finally. Tears slid silently down her cheeks beneath the candlelight. That is the problem, Damien, she whispered. You never noticed anything unless it threatened your world. Her hand moved instinctively against her stomach again. But this baby was my world already. Her words stayed lodged inside my chest like something sharp and permanent. This baby was my world already. Claire stood beneath the stained glass window, trembling softly while snow fell outside the church in slow, white silence. I had spent years believing love meant protecting people financially, physically, strategically. But standing there looking at my wife, I finally understood something humiliatingly simple. Claire never needed my money. She needed me to stand beside her when it mattered. And I failed. You are right, I said quietly. Her expression shifted slightly. Probably because men like me were not trained to admit fault. Especially not to women. Especially not publicly. But none of that mattered anymore. I should have stopped them, I continued carefully. I should have protected you. Claire looked away immediately, tears slipping silently down her cheeks again. Damien, please. Her voice sounded exhausted now instead of angry. I do not have energy for another apology. That hurt because I knew she meant it. Words meant nothing after enough disappointment. I took another slow step closer, close enough to see the faint shadows beneath her eyes, close enough to notice how pale she still looked. Did you eat today? I asked softly. Claire blinked in surprise. What, did you eat? That is your concern right now? Yes, because suddenly everything felt terrifying. The cold weather. Her exhaustion. The way she kept holding her stomach protectively like she was trying to reassure herself the baby was still safe. Claire stared at me for a long moment before answering quietly. I had tea. My mind tightened instantly. Tea? That was not food. Claire, do not do that. Do what? Act like you care now because you found out about the baby. The accusation landed exactly where it should have, directly in the center of my guilt. I care because I love you, I said immediately. Her eyes closed briefly like hearing that hurt worse somehow. You loved me enough to stay silent while your mother treated me like I was temporary. I had no defense against that. None. Silence stretched between us while candlelight flickered softly across the church walls. Somewhere near the altar, an old clock ticked quietly through the stillness. Claire wrapped her arms around herself slowly. I spent 2 years trying to fit into your world, she whispered. The parties, the dinners, the way everyone looked at me like I was something embarrassing you picked up out of pity. Her voice cracked slightly. And I kept telling myself it was okay because at least I had you. God. Every word destroyed another piece of me. Then that night happened. She continued softly. And I realized I was completely alone. You were never alone. I was sitting beside you while they insulted me and you did nothing. I swallowed hard because hearing her say it out loud sounded even uglier than the memory itself. I know, Claire laughed bitterly under her breath. You know what the worst part was? I shook my head slowly. She looked down at her stomach with tears filling her eyes again. I was so excited to tell you. The pain in her voice physically hurt to hear. I spent an hour wrapping the ultrasound because I wanted it to feel special. My chest tightened violently. I imagined her sitting alone in our bedroom, carefully wrapping the biggest moment of our lives while smiling to herself, hoping I would be happy. I even practiced what I was going to say. She whispered with a shaky laugh that nearly broke me completely. I sounded ridiculous. Claire. But then your mother started talking and everyone just watched. Her voice dropped quieter, including you. Silence swallowed us again because she was right, every terrible second of it. I stepped closer carefully until only a few feet separated us. I cannot change what happened, I admitted quietly, but I swear to you, if I could relive that night, nobody would ever make you feel small again. Claire looked at me finally then, really looked at me. And for the first time since I arrived, I think she noticed something different. I was tired, unshaven, my dress shirt wrinkled beneath my coat from sleeping in the car between searching hospitals and hotels and highways trying to find her. The old version of me would have sent other people to look, but I searched myself because losing Claire terrified me more than any enemy ever had. Her eyes dropped briefly toward the scarf still wrapped around my hand, then back to my face. You drove all the way here yourself? She asked quietly. Yes. Why? The answer came out before pride could stop it, because I could not survive not knowing where you were. Claire's breath caught softly. Tears filled her eyes all over again, while snow drifted behind her through colored glass windows. I moved one step closer, slowly, carefully. Come home with me, I whispered, but Claire shook her head immediately. I do not know where home is anymore. And hearing that nearly shattered what was left of my heart. The silence after her words felt unbearable. I do not know where home is anymore. Claire stood beneath flickering candle light with tears shining in her eyes while snow drifted softly outside St. Mary's. I had spent my entire adult life controlling rooms with a single look, but standing there in front of my wife, I felt powerless for the first time in years because there was no threat I could eliminate, no amount of money I could spend, no strategy capable of undoing heartbreak. Then let me rebuild it, I said quietly. Claire looked away immediately, like hearing that exhausted her. Damien, I mean it. My voice cracked slightly from exhaustion and something deeper. Fear, maybe. I know I do not deserve another chance right now. Maybe not ever. But please do not shut me out completely. Claire wrapped her coat tighter around herself while breathing unevenly. You think this is only about your family insulting me? She whispered. It was not just one dinner. My chest tightened, I know. No, she said softly, shaking her head. I do not think you do. Her eyes finally lifted back toward mine. Do you know what it feels like to sit at tables where everyone acts like you are invisible unless they are criticizing you? I swallowed hard. Claire, do you know what it feels like hearing women joke that you married me because I looked good beside you? Every word sounded quieter than the last somehow, more tired. I spent 2 years trying to become someone your world would respect. Tears slipped down her cheeks again, and none of it mattered because the only person whose opinion I cared about stayed silent. God, I deserved every second of this pain, every word. You are right, I admitted softly. I failed you. Claire's lips trembled slightly hearing that. You were supposed to protect me emotionally, too. I closed my eyes briefly because hearing her say it that plainly nearly shattered me completely. Protect me emotionally, such a simple thing, and somehow the one thing I never learned how to do properly. I opened my eyes again slowly. I spent my entire life believing love meant keeping people physically safe. I confessed quietly. Money, security, protection, control. Claire watched me silently now. But you, my voice lowered, you were asking me for something much smaller and much harder. What? She whispered. I looked directly at her. To stand beside you. Silence filled the church again. Soft piano music drifted faintly through hidden speakers while candle flames flickered against the walls. Claire's breathing trembled slightly. Mine probably did, too. Then suddenly her face lost color again. She reached for the edge of the pew beside her sharply. Instinct moved me forward before I could stop myself. Claire. She swayed once, just slightly, but enough to make panic slam through my chest instantly. I am fine, she whispered weakly. She was absolutely not fine. Sit down. Damien, I said I am. Her knees buckled before she finished the sentence. I caught her instantly. The moment her body collapsed against mine, fear unlike anything I had ever known tore through me. Claire. My voice sounded wrecked now, completely wrecked. Her eyes fluttered shut briefly while one trembling hand pressed against her stomach protectively. I am okay, she whispered faintly. You are freezing. Her skin felt cold even through her coat. Too cold. I lowered her carefully onto the pew while kneeling in front of her without caring how ridiculous I looked in my expensive coat on a church floor. Nothing mattered except her breathing. Look at me, I said softly. Claire opened her eyes slowly. Tears slipped sideways into her hairline. I am just tired. You almost fainted. I have not slept much. Guilt hit me so hard I nearly stopped breathing again. Of course she had not slept. She was carrying our baby alone while running from the man she loved. Have you eaten anything besides tea today? Claire looked away guiltily, and that answer alone terrified me. I exhaled shakily before standing immediately. Wait here. Damien, please, my voice cracked again. Just this once, let me take care of you. Claire stared at me silently, while snow continued falling outside the stained glass windows. Then finally, exhausted beyond arguing, she gave one tiny nod. Relief nearly brought me to my knees. I grabbed the scarf from beside her carefully and wrapped it around her shoulders before stepping toward the church doors. But halfway there, I stopped and looked back at her sitting alone beneath candlelight with one hand protectively over her stomach. My wife, my child, my entire world sitting quietly inside a little church 2 hours away from Manhattan. And for the first time in my life, Damien Morty understood something terrifyingly simple. Love was not measured by power. Love was measured by who stayed when things became painful. The diner across from St. Mary's smelled like coffee, maple syrup, and warmth. Small yellow lights glowed against frosted windows while snow continued falling outside in soft silence. Claire sat across from me in the corner booth wrapped in her cream-colored coat and scarf, while steam rose from a bowl of soup placed carefully in front of her. She had barely touched it at first, like she felt guilty accepting care for me again. That realization alone nearly destroyed me. Please eat something, I said quietly. Claire looked down at the soup for a long moment before finally lifting the spoon with trembling fingers. Relief spread through my chest so suddenly it almost hurt. Such a small thing, watching my wife eat, yet somehow it felt more important than every business deal I had closed in the past 10 years. The waitress passed by with a tired smile. Can I get you to anything else? Claire shook her head softly. No, thank you. Still polite, still gentle, even after everything. I watched snow gather against the diner windows while Claire slowly finished half the soup and most of the toast beside it. Color had finally started returning faintly to her cheeks. The dark shadows beneath her eyes still remained though. I hated those shadows, hated knowing I put them there. You should stay here tonight, I said carefully after a while. Claire's eyes lifted toward mine immediately. Here, at the inn, she looked down at the table quietly. I cannot afford another week there. My chest tightened painfully. Of course she could not. Claire had left Manhattan with one suitcase and almost no money because she was too proud to touch anything connected to me. I already paid for it, I admitted softly. Her expression changed instantly. Damien, just listen first. My voice stayed calm even though my heart felt like it was cracking open inside my chest. You do not have to come home with me today. You do not have to forgive me today either. Claire stared silently while candlelight from the table flickered softly between us. But please let me make sure you are safe while you decide what happens next. Her eyes filled again immediately. God. Claire cried more in the past hour than I had seen in the past year, because she trusted me enough before to hide her pain. Now she was too exhausted to pretend anymore. I do not know how to trust you right now, she whispered. Honesty would have hurt less if it came from anyone else, but hearing it from her nearly stopped my heart completely. I nodded slowly because she deserved honesty back. I know. Silence settled between us again. Outside, snow drifted softly across Haven Lake while headlights passed through the quiet street beyond the diner windows. Then Claire reached into her coat pocket slowly and pulled something small into her hands. My breath caught instantly. The ultrasound photo. She looked down at it with tears gathering in her eyes again. I carried this around for 3 days, she whispered softly. I kept thinking maybe if I stared at it long enough, I would stop missing you. Pain ripped through my chest so sharply I had to look away briefly. Claire. But every time I heard the heartbeat in my head, her voice cracked completely now. I wanted you there. I looked back at her immediately, really looked at her. The woman who still wanted me beside her after I gave her every reason to leave forever. I reached across the table slowly, carefully, giving her enough time to pull away if she wanted, but she did not. Her fingers trembled slightly when I took her hand. Warm, small, familiar home. I am sorry, I whispered. Not polished, not strategic, just true. Not because I got caught failing you, because I finally understand how deeply I hurt the person I love most. Claire's eyes closed briefly while tears slipped down her cheeks. I was so scared, she admitted quietly. Of what? That our baby would grow up feeling invisible beside your world too. God, that shattered me completely. Because she had not only been protecting herself, she had been protecting our child from becoming lonely in my universe of power and silence. I tightened my fingers gently around hers. That will never happen. How can you promise that? I held her gaze steadily. Because I finally learned what matters. Claire watched me silently while the diner lights reflected softly in her blue eyes. Then slowly, hesitantly, she guided my hand toward her stomach beneath the coat. My entire body went still the second my palm rested there. Warmth, life, my child, our child. Emotion rose so fast inside my chest, it almost stole my breath completely. Claire's eyes filled again watching my expression. The doctor said the heartbeat is strong, she whispered. I swallowed hard against the pressure burning behind my ribs. Then, before pride could stop me, before years of cold control could pull me back into myself, tears blurred my vision for the first time in longer than I could remember. Claire's breath caught softly seeing them. I lowered my forehead carefully against her hand, while snow continued falling outside the diner windows. Manhattan suddenly felt 1,000 miles away. Power, reputation, fear, none of it mattered anymore. Because in that quiet little town beside a frozen lake, one tiny heartbeat had brought Damien Morty to his knees.